Welcome to One Tired Teacher, episode 103, Systems and Organization in the ESE Classroom with Sabrina Crews. So welcome to the show today. I am excited to have a guest, a fellow teacher who is an expert on all things systems and organization. Now, she is very specific to ESE. However, I think that these systems and these routines and the things that she talks about today are so important for all classroom teachers. And, I thought that maybe we would take just a little bit of a break with our conversation about Makerspace, because sometimes when we don't have the right systems in place, it really makes us feel crazy, like we want to go crazy. And right now, in this chaotic time, in this chaotic world, I thought a little bit of organization and a little bit of systems might help. I've become a huge fan of the home edit, and I've done the home edit on my kitchen. And now I'm thinking it's time for a home edit or a classroom edit or a media center edit in my learning space. And I'm wondering if you're feeling the same way. And Sabrina really helps put some things into perspective. She also talks about some systems that you can put in place in Makerspace. I hope you stick around.
Welcome to One Tired Teacher. And even though she may need a nap, this teacher is ready to wake up and speak her truth about the trials and treasures of teaching. Here she is, wide awake. Wait, she's not asleep right now, is she? She is awake, right? Okay. From Trina Debery Teaching and Learning, your host, Trina Debery.
Hey, so today's going to be a good one. It's really helpful. Sabrina gives us some really good tips, and I know that you're going to get a lot of value out of this. I want to remind you before we get started and we jump into this interview, I want to remind you that I am looking for teachers, home school parents, media specialists, Makerspace teachers, anyone that has had a little bit of experience or wants to have a little bit of experience on Makerspace. I am looking for some guests. So if that's you, then reach out to me. You can direct message me on Instagram. You can find me on my Makerspace Thinking and Learning Facebook group. You can write to me at trinadebery@trinadeberyteachingandlearning.com, and you can let me know if that is you, because I'd love to have you and I'd love to talk about it. And I really, really want to dive into that conversation with some fellow Makerspace enthusiasts. So let me know if that's you. I'd love to talk to you. Also, I want to share that if you are, this is a really, Sabrina talks a lot about some good things to have in place. And we do talk a little bit about what we can do in a Makerspace, but I also want to share that adding jobs to a Makerspace can really help make things run smoothly. When kids have buy-in and they're doing things and they're participating in their space and they're taking some ownership, it really helps to make things run smoothly, and it also prevents you from wanting to pull your hair out. Well, I have some job descriptions that you can print as poster size or regular size, and they're a freebie that I am giving away. And so if you want to grab those, you can go to trinadeberyteachingandlearning.com/Makerspace jobs. So I am going to link to those in the show notes so that you can grab them easily. They'll have a big button on the show notes that you can press, and it will direct you to how you can get that download. Anyway, all right, let's get on with the show. So I'm so happy to have Sabrina Crews here today on the podcast. She is an expert in systems in special education and organization. And she's going to be talking to us about that today, because the systems are so important to have in a classroom, which we have talked about on many other episodes. And so I think that right now, especially with what's going on in the world, having a little bit of organization and things put in place is crucial. So welcome, Sabrina.
Thank you so much for having me. So yeah, my name is Sabrina Crews, and I'm actually in my 8th year of teaching special education. 4 of those years were spent in the middle school, but I learned pretty quickly that middle school is not for me, and I am in the elementary school teaching the students with the severe disabilities. You might hear it called life skills. Our district calls it low incidence. It's all the same thing. But like you said, I try to help teachers create innovative, organized, and student-centered classrooms and to help them systemize. And I honestly have been using systems in my classroom since day one because it saves me time and increases accountability and consistency in my classroom.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think that that is, I don't even think you have to be a special education teacher. I think any teacher can benefit from having really good systems in place. I mean, I know when I left, I was at a school for a really long time, and my principal got promoted, and I left and went to a different school, and I was like, oh my goodness, like sometimes I felt like some of the systems, I mean, the principal was new to the school, so it was like we had a long way to go. So I don't blame this on any person. I just feel like there wasn't like really strong systems in place. And what a massive difference when you are used to that, and then coming and it being like, well, what do you mean you don't have, like, it just feels, it's crazy.
Exactly.
So I think any teacher can benefit from that. So tell us a
Exactly.
little bit about like, um, what would be the first thing that you might say to a teacher when they're like trying to set up some systems in their classroom?
Yeah. So it surprises me how many teachers don't realize that they're actually using systems on a daily basis every day in their classroom, and they just don't have it outlined per se.
Mhm,
But
mhm,
this most simplistic system you can think of is a checklist. So a lot of teachers might have a checklist when they come in the classroom where, they put down all the chairs, they set up the morning work, and then maybe they check their email. And that right there is a system.
uh-huh.
And so a lot of teachers don't realize that they're already doing systems. And so when I'm first working with teachers, I just recommend they look and see like what kind of checklist can you put in place for stuff that you're already doing, because a checklist is the most simplistic system you can start with. And oftentimes you're already doing things that would fit perfectly into a checklist.
Mhm. No, I think that's great. And would you say that like, what do you think is the difference between like a system and a procedure?
So I think they're very, very similar. Procedures, routines, systems, oftentimes they get interchanged. And
Mhm,
when I think of the difference, systems are something that's written down. So a procedure or a routine is something that can happen whether you write it down or not. We all might
mhm,
have a morning routine we follow, but that doesn't mean it's written down. But systemizing that routine would be to actually write it down step by step, complete a task analysis, and make it so it's almost replicable. So if
mhm,
a sub comes into your classroom, you can have all these systems laid out for that substitute. So if a student's like, teacher, we don't do it that way, when our normal teacher's here, this is how we do it. You can go check that system sheet and it's written out step by step by step. And they know exactly if the student's trying to pull a fast one on the sub or if it really is the way that they do things. So systems, I think the difference between that from routines and procedures is you actually write it down.
yes. Okay, I think that's good. And what do you say about, like, do you have it written down in a simplified form for students? Like, how do you share that with students? I know that for me, like, I did have it written down, and we would practice it, and I would model it, and then we would practice it, and then like I'd give them feedback, and so that's kind of how we did it in my classroom. But like, what do you say for what do you say for students?
Yeah, so oftentimes for me, especially because I do work with some students with severe disabilities, I take pictures of the students completing the steps in the system while we're learning it. And
Mm-hmm.
then that becomes their kind of system visual schedule. And then I also like to use visual social stories in
Mm-hmm.
the sense that I'll take a video of the students completing the system start to finish. And then that becomes a social story that we can go back and review if we find out that we come back from a break and we need to review the system, whether it's like an entry system or an independent work system, we can watch the video. It's really quick for them to see themselves doing the system and being successful. And then I also have those visuals, the pictures of them doing it up for them to see every day.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I never even thought about doing a video so that you could go back and actually watch it, and like the students could watch it together. I mean, that's kind of like almost like you would even do with kids that you were like playing a sport. Like,
Right.
we're going to watch footage of like, and we're going to analyze this. And I think that makes total sense. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and especially with this whole COVID time and everything being online, you can set the videos to be in, whether you use Schoology or Google Classroom. You could even have an entire folder that's just these video social stories. So you could direct the student maybe during independent work, say, hey, I noticed that you might need a refresher on this system. During your independent work time, go check out the video. And you don't even have to do it whole class. You can individualize it for the students if you set those videos up. And it's just a great way for also the students to realize, oh, I do know what I'm doing. I just needed a refresher.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And we're using Schoology actually. And we are, even though a lot of us are actually back face to face, like my district is, well, my state is, in Florida. So we are brick and mortar for most of us, but we do have school, like that's an expectation that we're still using Schoology, because like I just told you off air that we have a hurricane about to hit. And so we will be e-learning tomorrow and Friday while we deal with this storm, which will be interesting if our power goes out. But anyway, and we have Schoology, so we have to be ready to go at a moment's notice. So it, everything has to be housed inside of Schoology. So I think like putting videos and things like that's very helpful for like all kids.
Yeah, and I mean, I think even once we get through this pandemic, however long that takes, I think education as a whole is going to switch, since we do have these e-learning platforms. And just, it's also a great way for you to house them too. Sometimes, my computer gets flooded with all these files that I'm making.
Yes.
So I'll just go into the Schoology page and like, oh, there it is, instead of having to dig through my files on the computer if we need to review it whole school. So it's also kind of nice from an organizational standpoint to have everything you need for that specific class in one place.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that's helpful. What are some systems that you would recommend that people made sure that they had in place?
So definitely an entryway system. So what are the students doing the second they step foot in your classroom? That is huge. That's the very first system I actually implemented in my classroom, because it just sets up the tone for the time the students are with you, whether you're a gen ed teacher and you're self-contained and the students are with you for all subjects, or you're a special ed teacher and kids are coming in and out of your room, or you're departmentalized. Students are going to be coming in and out of your classroom all day anyway. And if you have a procedure, if you have this system in place where you've written it down, you've got your visuals, you've taught it to the students, you've got your video social story, that one system sets up the entire day for everyone in your classroom. Because if someone comes in and they're kind of off, and, sometimes our students come in and they're not really feeling their best, but if they can start their day with success, even if it's something as simple as, I know I put my code up, I put my folder in this bin, I grab my morning work, I sit down and I get started. There's 4 things they've already met success with. And so it kind of sets up the day. So I definitely recommend that everyone start with some sort of entry system.
I totally agree. I think that is a huge, I even found that I needed it for the end of the day. Like that was like, I would go along and I'm like, wow, everything is running really smoothly. We've got a good lines, system. We've got a good come to the floor and transition system. Like I felt like we had all these things, but then the end of the day felt like chaos. And I'm like, it's because I don't have a procedure. I'm like, I need a procedure for the end of the day. And then it was okay.
Yeah, definitely. The beginning of the day and the end of the day really set the tone for the entire class and how everyone's going to feel. And with that, one of the systems that I think is huge that is done in almost every special ed classroom I've seen, but isn't often done in the general education classrooms, is something called an instructional matrix. And basically it outlines what everyone is doing, when they're doing it, what adults are in your room, and it kind of outlines your ideal day and shows you exactly what procedures, what systems, the things that you kind of need to set up. So it's a great way to start after you've got your entry system, after you've got your end of the day system in place. If you sit down and make this instructional matrix and set like I usually do 15-minute increments, because oftentimes we transition from one activity to another during that time. And you think of what are the kids doing at this time? What am I doing at this time? Do I have any supports in my classroom? And just kind of setting up the ideal overall day. And then you can really quickly see, okay, ideally, this is the type of transition I want to be happening. What system do I need to set up to make this transition happen? So the instructional matrix is kind of like your roadblock for your entire day, like your roadmap. And it tells you exactly from, if you start at 7:45 and go to 3:15, it outlines in 15-minute increments from 7:45 to 3:15. And it really just helps you realize what systems you need. And it is a system in and of itself.
Mm-hmm. No, that makes total sense. And we didn't call it that. Like we didn't call it an instructional matrix, but I think that, I mean, having to know like your schedule and but I really like the idea of like, this is what I want the kids to be doing. This is what the adult will be doing in the room. I think that's really helpful.
Yeah, it's an instructional matrix is kind of like your schedule on steroids.
Uh-huh.
So it takes your normal typical schedule might say ELA block, and it'll be like a 90-minute chunk of time, and math block will be a 60-minute chunk of time. And you take that and break it down even more. Mm-hmm. Whole group, phonics, read aloud, center 1, center 2, and even breaks down the centers. So then you can look and say, during whole group, what is the expectation for the students? What is the expectation for myself as the teacher? What is the expectation for any parapro that might be in the classroom? Things like that. And then it breaks it down and just gives you the expectations for 15-minute time chunks, which might seem kind of daunting in the beginning, but oftentimes the expectations are pretty similar throughout the entire day. It just might ebb and flow a little bit based off of center expectations versus whole group expectations. And then, like I said, it kind of shows you exactly what systems you need to put in place in your classroom.
Yeah, no, I think that's really helpful. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. And I think that would help gen ed teachers and ESE teachers. So I think that's great. I don't think I mean, I had it broken down in my own mind, but I don't think that I ever like put it down on paper to see, I mean, in that way. Like, I think that's helpful. One of the things, there's a couple things that I thought of. One of them is I want to think about like what you would do, like what kind of system you might even put in place in like something like a Makerspace. So just be thinking of that. And then the other one is virtual systems. Like what are some necessities there? And then my other thing, and I have to say all of these things first, and then I'll go get to them because I'm afraid I'm going to forget something.
Yeah.
What was my other thing? It was, the visual schedule. Like, I don't want to like just glaze over that, because I think that's really helpful for a lot of different kinds of learners. And so I think sometimes we think just because we put it in this step-by-step thing, if we don't have any visuals or we don't have any way for the student to actually see what that looks like, I think a lot of kids really struggle with that. So I had to go to that really fast.
Yeah. I can definitely start with a Makerspace, because what I would say for that is kind of like how I would tell you to set up any system in your classroom. And that is to put yourself in the shoes of everyone who's going to be using the system. So you as the teacher, the students, and then any type of support you might have, and to physically go through every step you would want them to accomplish and write it down as you're going through. So you might have a list of teacher and all the things you have to do, the kind of behind the scenes, the prep work, the lesson planning, and break it down. Do you need visuals in your Makerspace so the students know exactly where to put the items when they're done using them? And then if you go through with the students, seeing, okay, what do I need to use for that day? Where does it need to go back? What do I do when I'm actually at the table with the materials? And then if you have any kind of parapro support or whatever, what exactly is their role in this process? Are they more of a kind of stand back and watch and let the students learn? Or are there students who might need more in-depth hands-on using something like a prompt hierarchy, and just really physically get up and go through the steps? So not in your mind. I'm a big visual learner, and I would do all the steps in my mind, but until you are physically doing it, sometimes you might miss a step or two. Yes. And especially doing it as the different roles, as the teacher role, as the student role, as a support role, because sometimes we may think that we've covered all the steps for a student, but until we put ourselves in their shoes, we might have forgotten something. And so any system you're putting in place, whether it's a Makerspace, which has a lot of moving parts, or something a little bit more simple, I highly recommend that any person who's going to be involved in the system, adult, admin, students, paras, you as the teacher, go through the steps for every single one of those stakeholders and write it down.
Okay. That makes perfect sense, because I know a lot of people, like we've been talking about Makerspace on my podcast for like the last couple of weeks. So that's like really fresh in my mind. And I'm also working on a course. And so I'm excited, but I think those are really good tips that you just gave, because like thinking about it, sometimes you think you've got it all covered, but then when you actually walk in those shoes of the students, and even yourself, and what your role is going to be, because I think that's really important, especially in a place like a Makerspace where it needs to be so kid-centered. So I think those are important. And like some kids really struggle when things are so open-ended. And so what are you going to do? What kind of structure are you going to have in place for kids that struggle with that part? Because I feel like we've done this kind of to kids, where our school systems have not allowed for that out of the box kind of thinking. And so now when we put kids in those situations, they're like, I don't know what to do. They have no idea what to do. They don't know how to think. So in some of those ways, in some of those outside of the box ways. So I think that's important, having those things in place.
And it definitely helps you realize what organizational pieces you might be missing. So I mentioned visuals a lot because that's a lot of the ways that my students communicate is with visuals, because they might be nonverbal. But if you're not in a setting or around students who are nonverbal, who use picture cues to communicate, you often don't think about it. But if you think for some of our youngest learners, or our learners who they might be struggling with reading.
Or ELL students.
Or ELL students, if they have a picture, then they know exactly where the material goes when you're done with it. If they have some sort of visual schedule of, this open-ended thinking that they have to do, if you kind of outline it as much as you can for them, it gives them structure in something that's not meant to be structured, but in a way that allows for that free thinking. So it wouldn't be so set up of step one, you're building this, and then this, and then, it doesn't tell them exactly what to make. It just kind of tells them, okay, first you're going to take out the materials, then you might plan your design, it kind of outlines the steps for them, but in a way that is visual, so it's accessible to all learners, whether they're readers, whether they're non-readers, verbal, nonverbal, ESL, or not, native English speakers. It just kind of, visuals work for everyone.
Yes. Yeah, I agree. I think that's great. I think that's so helpful. And I really feel like sometimes gen ed teachers, we forget that we have to do that. I mean, like I'm not a very good, like I can't draw. My students used to laugh because they'd be like, yes, you can. I'm like, oh, no. And I, make these things trying to help them. And then they're like, is that a horse, or is that, it's like not supposed to be a horse at all. And it's and things like that. But you can still use like regular pictures, or clip art is very helpful as well. So,
well, and oftentimes the best visuals I've used and the students have responded to the most are pictures of the students themselves.
Yeah, I love that.
So, I mean, we spend so much time at the beginning of the year teaching the procedures, teaching our systems. Grab your phone. There's cameras on your phone. They don't have to be fancy pictures. You don't need fancy lighting. Just the child seeing themselves in the picture, or seeing a classmate, makes it so much more real to them than just a clip art or things like that. But I definitely use clip art. I use all the symbols I can get my hands on, because I'm not very good at drawing. So definitely clip art. And then just don't be afraid to take pictures of your students. And if you're keeping it within your classroom, you'll have to check with your district about what the policies are. But oftentimes I'll just send them a letter at the beginning of the year that says, hey, I'm going to be using pictures to support for visual supports during the classroom. Are you okay with your student being in them? And then that allows for me to take those videos of the social stories, because even in Makerspace, you can take videos of them in the Makerspace. I don't know, you're probably already doing it and not even thinking of it, because of the amazing things they come up with. Well, throw that together in iMovie or something. It doesn't have to be fancy. And there you go. You've got examples for students to see. And it just, using the actual students, it's kind of like how we want to learn their name right away in the beginning. It's just like that. It just makes it more real to them.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's a really good idea. Okay, so what about systems for e-learning, for like virtual or distance learning?
Yeah, so systems for virtual learning are a little bit more challenging. My school district also uses Schoology, and it's kind of the same no matter what your platform is. But the biggest thing I like to do system-wise is folders, and really setting up folders for my students. And most of the platforms, Schoology isn't the most friendly, but most of the platforms can let you put visuals in as the actual folder, and it's not a folder. So you can put in for your ELA, all of your ELA materials, you can put a picture or a clip art of someone reading a book or something like that. So everyone knows when it's time for literacy class, that's where I go. And just kind of organizing things in that manner. And then also, kind of the same as an entry system for brick and mortar, you want an entry system for when they're getting on your live calls. So are they going to be saying hello and then muting themselves? Do you want them to say anything at all? Do you want them to come in muted? And the good thing is most of the platforms can kind of let you set that up. So you can have waiting rooms, you can not have waiting rooms. And I definitely like to make a class job for my entry system on my live calls, where one student's responsibility is to welcome everyone as they come in and then remind them that they need to mute. So when it is time to start teaching, everyone's muted and ready to listen. And if there's any kind of materials they might need for the day, having a slide with, again, visuals. And when that student helper comes on, you can remind them, okay, these are the things you need to remind the students to get out. So if someone comes on, the student can say, welcome, make sure you have your reading notebook and a pencil, and don't forget to mute yourself. And that's
great.
That's your simple entry system.
Yeah,
so,
I think that's great. I love jobs. Like, I think anything that a student, can do, they should be doing that. Like, I think that's really, I think that's really helpful. No, jobs are the best. And I think that makes total sense. And then having a slide of the materials and having a student do that, I think that's huge. I think that's really helpful.
And same for your exit, your end of the day. So in virtual learning, it's the end of the live meeting because you might have multiple throughout the day, but you still want a system for that. And a simple system for that could be the same type of thing. Put a slide up if there's any homework, and you have one student whose job is to say goodbye to everyone and remind them of the homework. So they'll say, don't forget to get on iReady and do 30 minutes of math lessons today, and we'll see you for the next class. Bye, everyone. And then everyone can log off. And so it's e-learning, the systems are a lot harder in the sense that you can't really implement as many, but you can definitely put some systems in place.
Yeah, no, I think that's helpful. I mean, you're right. And that's the teacher presence part in like e-learning makes it more difficult. But I think if you have those kinds of things going and and it is harder. I agree with you on Schoology. Like, I will try to drag in clip art in a folder, and it's like the whole screen, and then you got to pull it all it's a challenge. It's a challenge for sure. I mean, I had figured it out, but I still think I think it's a little bit challenging.
Yeah, I definitely am jealous of all the people who get to use Google. I even at one point made a Google website and then just linked it in my Schoology page and was like, go over here. And I'm working on it. It's getting a little better, but definitely just, like I said, visuals and some sort of organizational system in your actual course is just going to be the biggest things that will help you for virtual learning.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you so much. Like, I feel like you gave such good information. That was really helpful. Is there anything that you would like to share that I didn't ask you, or a question that I didn't ask that you wish I asked?
Honestly, I just want to say, just don't get overwhelmed when you think of systemizing your classroom. Everyone that I've ever worked with, I've always say, systemize everything. And their eyes bug out and they're like, you want me to systemize my entire day? And the answer is yes, because you're already doing it. You just need to write it down. And that's why I definitely think everyone should start with that instructional matrix piece, because that's going to break it down for you. And I actually have a freebie for everyone that kind of gives the step-by-step of how to make your own instructional matrix with a little template. because I think it's so important that you start with that system and then go to your entry and your end of the day. Because like I said, that instructional matrix is just going to tell you everything that, one, you already have systemized, you just didn't write down, and two, where you might be lacking in your systems.
Yeah, that's great. I will link to that in the show notes. So make sure you give me the link.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's really helpful because, sometimes we just need that little bit of nudge to get us started. So that's great. Thank you. Okay. So tell my listeners where they can find you, more about you, or more, how to reach out to you.
Yeah, so I am mostly on Instagram, Miss Crews's Classroom Creations, and that I will definitely make sure you know how to spell that, because Crews can be spelled in so many different ways. And then I do have a blog where I kind of try and talk about these different topics and provide some examples for everyone. And I can also give you a link to that. That's just MissCrews'sClassroomCreations.com. So basically, anywhere you would go, Pinterest, Facebook, it's Miss Crews's Classroom Creations. I tried to keep it pretty simplistic and simple for everyone.
Yeah, that's great. Well, thank you so much again, Sabrina. I really appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you for having me.
And thank you for sticking around. I told you she was great, wasn't she? Full of really great information. You can find more out about her on the links in the show notes. And don't forget to grab that freebie, that Makerspace job freebie, and make your life so much easier. Another way to make your life easy, because I know right now you are like in the thick of it. Actually, you may be about ready to be on vacation. I know that I am about ready to be on vacation because we have all of next week off for Thanksgiving, and I'm so looking forward to that. I am going to be traveling to Portland, so I'm thinking about doing the podcast from Portland. I think that would be really fun, but we'll see. We'll see what happens, because I am looking forward to a little bit of relaxation and some rest, and and maybe a lot of rain, I think, and a lot colder weather than where I am in Florida. So I want to also tell you, if you are still working next week, because maybe you are working Monday and Tuesday, or possibly even up to Wednesday, I do have a really helpful little unit based on Molly's Pilgrim. It's a thematic unit, and it covers all subjects with that that theme of Molly's Pilgrim, which is such an adorable story. And it talks about immigration and, being inclusive and things like that. So just a really cute little story, and it's a chapter book. And so it will definitely take you a couple of days to get through it. And then I've got activities to go with that. So if that helps, that, I would love for that to give you a little bit of a relief when it comes to planning. And also I have a few Thanksgiving Makerspace activities as well, which would also be, something that you could do that would be standards-based, but also fun. I hope that helps. Until next time, this one tired teacher is ready for a long, restful break. Sweet dreams and sleep tight.